Matthew 18, 1-5 and 10-14. At that time the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Then he called a little child over to sit among the disciples and said, "I assure you that if you do not turn your lives around and become like this little child, you will definitely not enter the kingdom of heaven. Those who humble themselves like this little child will be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. Be careful that you do not look down on one of these little ones. I say to you that their angels in heaven are always looking into the face of my Father who is in heaven. What do you think? If someone had 100 sheep and one of them wandered off, would he not leave the 99 of them on the hillside and go and search for the one that wandered off? If he finds it, I assure you that he is happier about having that one sheep than about the 99 who did not wander off. In the same way, my Father who is in heaven does not want to lose one of these little ones."
How many of you actually heard the phrase, "Children should be seen and not heard," directed at you when you were a child? What about "Big kids don't cry"? I hesitate to ask if any of you remember actually using those phrases yourselves. I have to wonder, however, just at what point those phrases fell out of fashion in parenting circles. I suspect that the former passed away far before the latter, and that "big kids don't cry" is possibly used too often in families still these days.
Both of these expressions devalue children. They imply that children are only worthy of attention once they become mature adults. And in our society, that means adults who can work, contribute, and consume. Anyone who does less than that is, well, less than. These messages that one must stay on the margins until one reaches responsible adulthood, which might mean responsible, wealthy, white male adulthood in our society, and that one must bottle up negative emotions instilled very early in childhood, wreak a whole lot of damage. This week, I asked our Wednesday Zoom group, which is discussing the book The Mr. Rogers Effect, to share what they remember about the expression of feelings of sadness and anger in their families of origin. The responses were varied, and there was some very deep sharing. Most of us could not recall far back into our preschool years, but we extrapolated from later childhood memories and concluded that many of us did not receive the kind of focused, caring attention on talking about difficult feelings that Mr. Rogers gave to his young television neighbors. Most of us did not witness many adults consistently modeling healthy ways of working out anger or frustration or sadness in front of us when we were kids. And we could not identify many positive examples of such behavior in our communities now either. We spent a few moments in quiet appreciation, reflecting upon the daily little seeds of affirmation that Mr. Rogers planted through his television program over so many years, wondering how many children soaked up those lessons in managing emotions, finding a safe refuge for a few minutes a day. And we pondered over the habits that Mr. Rogers cultivated in himself so that he would have the emotional capacity to give this kind of focused, caring attention with so much consistency. A little shameless promo here. It is not too late to join in this weekly conversation on Zoom. We are finding this book very helpful and recommend it even if you're unable to participate in the group discussion on Wednesdays. We have 2 participants who are from a sister congregation. We figure the more the merrier. Mr. Rogers remembered what it was like to be a child. He remembered what it was like to be bullied. He never forgot. Operating from a place of privilege by virtue of his education, race, and gender, and with unique access to the incredibly influential platform of television and celebrity status, he championed the noble cause of lifting up childhood and its vulnerability, paying attention to children, and validating the feelings that dominate the childhood experience. These are not small things. These experiences of fear and sadness and anger, even if they are experienced by small people. These feelings are natural, and providing a safe space for talking about them helps people to divest them of their destructive energy so that children can grow into caring adults. When asked a question about status in God's kingdom, Jesus was quick to identify the lowest status person in his presence, a little child. He called his followers both to humility and to responsible care for those considered least and dismissible. And then he told a parable about a lost sheep and its shepherd, a shepherd who would not think to cut losses by leaving the lost one out to fend for itself. In just such a way, God values the last and the least, and so should we. I think about how many throwaway people there are out there, people others have given up on. How many people are harboring a damaged inner child? How many people are condemned to the margins because they cannot produce or are deemed unable to contribute? And how many little ones are positioned by virtue of their parents' stress and unjust conditions to become damaged adults, lost sheep in the making? These days, it seems like far more than 1 in 100 are left out. Whether children or those who once were children, whether from neglect or violence, substance abuse or poverty, mental illness or racism, too many are pushed to the margins, and too many feelings are deemed just more than we can handle, neither mentionable nor manageable. The needs in this world can seem overwhelming. The problems that require long-term solutions too many, and the time left to act far too short. But I want you to consider this in your own walking around life. The mysterious way that a single positive interaction, even with a stranger, can lift your mood and make your day. Consider the impact that taking just 15 minutes to engage in something like prayer, exercise, creativity, or helping another does for your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And imagine that impact multiplied day by day, individual by individual, neighborhood by neighborhood. Seeking out the 1 from the 100 may mean not only taking time to treat a child with kind and focused attention, but taking time to notice and address the inner child in angry or frustrated adults around us. In our Zoom group this week, we shared observations as to how Mr. Rogers did this with Senator John Pastore in that 1969 showdown on Capitol Hill, to which I alluded in the opening sermon of this series, and which you can easily find with a Google search. Our group noticed how Mr. Rogers did not respond in kind, when the senator was rude to him, but instead drew the senator in through his own modeling of emotional maturity. Mr. Rogers first declared that he trusted the senator to read his written statement. He used a quiet voice and stayed on message, not allowing himself to get distracted. He responded to the senator's questions when he demonstrated childlike curiosity. I noticed how, over time, Pastore's voice became almost childlike when he asked questions about Rogers' program like, "How long is it?" and "I'd like to see that program." And finally, Mr. Rogers demonstrated that he valued the senator when he said, "I'd very much like you to watch it." It was not just a masterful approach to what had been set up to be a national debate, this disarming a potential enemy. It was a demonstration of how an emotionally mature person in an everyday situation can transform an aggressor into an ally. Moreover, it was a demonstration of how to heal a wounded inner child, or to use language from Jesus' parable, how to bring a lost sheep home. For not only did Mr. Rogers and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting benefit from that encounter, but Senator Pastore was changed too. You can see it in his face when he says, "I think it's wonderful." May you go forth in awareness, in kindness, and in humility. Tend to your own inner child and your own spirit's needs for encouragement, beauty, solitude, and rest, so that your eyes and heart may stay open to the opportunities to provide that so needed healing validation to others. Amen.